Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is everything I watched in October of 2024. I started this month off by watching The Seventh Seal. This is directed by Ingmar Bergman. He's a Swedish director, and he does a great job with this one. Seventh Seal is focused on mortality and death, and overall it's just a very existential film. And I think it's so powerful. What it does great is it captures so many emotions. Like, it can be funny and joyous, and it can also just be sad and terrifying even. It just does a great job at capturing all those emotions, which I think is very important when you're making a movie about, life itself, because you have to be able to capture everything about life. And that's an extreme challenge, but The Seventh Seal does it so wonderfully. It is an extremely heavy film. It could be hard for some watchers, but it's also pretty short, which I think is really impressive for how much it does in its time length. It's just about an hour 30, and it does a great job with what little time it has. It doesn't feel too quick. It feels like they let scenes breathe. It's just really great all around. And then continuing on with Ingmar Bergman, I watched Wild Strawberries. Now, I learned afterwards that Ingmar Bergman's filmography really has to do with his development of his worldview, and you can go through his movies and just see how his view of the world changes and develops. And so that's really interesting. The problem is that The Seventh Seal and Wild Strawberries are made very close to each other. So they kind of display very similar themes and ideas. Wild Strawberries also deals with, mortality and a guy who's, trying to confront the fact that he's going to die. It still does a great job at it. I just really wish I didn't watch these movies so close to each other, because I feel like Wild Strawberries got a bit overshadowed. It didn't have as many powerful moments as The Seventh Seal, but I know I shouldn't be comparing them. It's just hard when I watch them so close to each other. And then I watched My Dinner with Andre. This was just a big wild card for me. I wasn't exactly sure what it was about, but I felt like for whatever reason that it was worth giving a shot. And man, it really was. It's a very fascinating film. It's a very difficult film as well. There's few films that I would consider genuinely challenging, but this entire movie is just two characters talking about, psychology and philosophy and just these out of the box concepts, and it's challenging for the viewer. You've got to be really invested in order to keep up. And honestly, I didn't keep up for a lot of it as well. But it's so engaging and so interesting. I think the beginning is a bit less so. It's just kind of setting up, giving background. But after that, man, it's so fascinating. So many themes and ideas that just really resonated with me. And it's incredible how well this movie has held up, because a lot of the things, they talk about, technology and how that influenced our lives. And this was made in 81? That's just insane. And man, it's just a great movie that really forces you to think, which I think is great. I think we need more movies like that really, grabs the viewer and tells them, engage with this, think about it. And then I watched The Wild Robot. And yeah, I'm a bit late to the party, but I got to it eventually. And I really enjoyed it. I was really excited for this movie, just hearing so many great things about it. It was really exciting to know that DreamWorks made another great movie, because they can be super flip-floppy with that. Overall, it's just a really wholesome movie. It's very feel-good, and it just makes you happy. Incredible visuals. It's a beautiful film. It's really great that they're sticking to that more paintbrush feel that we saw in Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. I don't know how else to describe it. But it's cool that they took inspiration from the Spider-Verse movies, clearly, but they still have their unique style. So,
And I am a wild robot.
It wasn't going to be as great as people said, because I honestly don't think people give DreamWorks movies as fair of a shot as they should. I heard a lot of people saying this is the best DreamWorks movies. I still don't think it's better than Kung Fu Panda 1 or How to Train Your Dragon 1. I really encourage people to go back to those movies, because those movies are also fantastic. But The Wild Robot is still a great, incredible movie. Throne of Blood is an Akira Kurosawa film. Now, I had an interesting experience, because the start of this movie, the first chunk of it, I just felt honestly bored. I was like, I know exactly where this is going. This feels really generic and not at all interesting. And I felt like that might have actually been because I read the synopsis. Because it's really weird. Because the synopsis, like, I don't know how else it would be worded. I'm not going to say the synopsis because it feels like it almost spoils a good chunk of this movie. Even though it doesn't really, it's just really difficult because based on the synopsis, I knew exactly where the story was going for quite a bit of it. But after that, I think the story really develops and it becomes a pretty interesting narrative. And by the end, I was genuinely enthralled. It was super interesting by the end, but it took a lot to get there. So I kind of have a hard time placing my feelings with this one. And then Eraserhead, it certainly is a movie. This is my first David Lynch film. I knew this one was kind of a horror, and I was like, I need to actually watch, some scary movies. It's October, it's Halloween month, and I have not watched a lot of horror, but I knew this wasn't going to be very traditional horror. It's weird. It's very bizarre. This movie is like it gives you quite a lot to think about, and through thinking about it, it's super hard to figure out. Okay, is there something actually here, or is it kind of maybe not? Like, is this kind of meaningless? And I'm not talking about the movie as a whole. I'm just talking about specific moments. Overall, though, I would say that there's a lot of meaning in a lot of this movie. There are certain scenes where I sometimes think back on it and I'm like, that was weird. Was it just weird for the sake of being weird, or was there an actual idea behind it? And I kind of have a hard time placing it. But it was just a really strange experience. Like, I don't think there's any other movie like it. But I did genuinely think I had a good time. That's a weird way to put it. I guess I should just say it was a good movie. It's super hard to recommend because it's like, I don't know what exactly this movie was, but it definitely did something. I'll give it that. I think it did something. I'm not entirely sure what that something is, but it did it. And then I watched another horror-esque movie, The Babadook. I say horror-esque just because it's not all that scary. It definitely has a lot of the ideas and sort of the common tropes of a horror movie, but it's still not scary. So I'd say if you're someone who's interested in horror, but you might be a little bit sensitive to that kind of stuff, this would be a good movie. I still think it's a great movie. I don't think a horror movie necessarily needs to be scary to be good. This movie has some really strong symbolism. It says a lot about trauma, and I think it's really interesting because the themes are kind of overt, and I don't know, maybe someone might feel like they're getting beat over the head with them, but I don't know. I think it was done very well, and just overall a really solid movie. It does build a really nice atmosphere. Even though it isn't necessarily scary, it's still effective in telling its story. And then North by Northwest. This is the final Hitchcock movie that I've really been interested in, at least right now. There might be some other ones that I figure I want to watch later, but this is another highly rated one of his, and it's definitely interesting because of how different it is from his other films. I've noticed that with Hitchcock, he kind of has a more smaller scope to his movies, but this one is like a big, we're traveling the globe type of movie. The main plot is just about a guy who gets mistaken for a secret agent, and he just goes through all these hijinks. It's kind of silly in a way. Like, I found a lot of the start really funny, honestly. But the main problem for me is as this story continues to go on, I really lost interest. It was a really fun, silly concept at the start, but as it went on, I was just not as engaged. I don't know if it was, doing less of that or what, but it wasn't doing anything that was real interesting. It's still a fine movie overall. I wouldn't be, mad if someone likes this, but it's just not my favorite. And that's everything I watched this month. My primary goal was to finish watching the movies from directors I like that I was really interested in, and just, watch the movies that I really wanted to see, as well as getting to know some new directors and, start watching their movies. I really did not watch as many movies from directors I already like as I would have wanted to, primarily Akira Kurosawa. He's got several other movies that I am intrigued by, and so I'll probably get to those eventually. But anyways, if you like this video, you can leave a comment, tell me your thoughts on these movies and on this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.